This is Mary-Anne Hobbs. We're live in Salford. You're locked on BBC Radio 6 Music. And, well, believe it or not, it's 30 years this week since the release of The Wonderful and Frightening World of the Fall. And we would like to mark the occasion on the show this morning. Brix Smith, wow, remarkable human being. He left school at the age of 16 to work in a meat factory on Manchester docks. And in 1976, he formed The Fall, which has had around 66 members or thereabouts. He actually fired one of them for ordering a salad. The salad was the last straw, he told The Independent. Mark said this about being in The Fall. He said, "It isn't like any other group. It isn't a holiday. A lot of musicians are really hard to deal with. They aren't as smart as me." But here is one former member who really is. Our very own Mark Riley.
Hello, Mary-Anne. Hello, listeners. Mark Riley here, Six Music's token X4 member. Hi. And as you've been kind enough to ask me to pick my favourite Fall song, I've put my mind to it and I've decided that I can't really come up with an absolute favourite. So I've gone for the first song I wrote in cahoots with Craig Scanlon. We like to think of ourselves as the Lennon and McCartney of the Bleak generation, though nobody else did. But the song in question, Roast Rumble, it was the first release to feature me, Craig and Steve Hanley, and we'd all been mates for years and all ended up in the same band together. Result. And the song, I can remember writing the riff in my mum and dad's house, along with Craig, and I think I'd based the riff around the Stooges' Shake appeal. But as we couldn't play properly, thankfully it sounded nothing like it. And whilst we're talking influences, listen to this.
I'm never, never, never gonna speed again. Put a gallon in me, Allen.
So that's Nervous Norvus with Transfusion, and if you listen closely to the Fall's Roast Rumble, you might notice something of a debt there too. Thank you very much. Enjoy, or don't.
A rumble, that's rumble.
If you are just joining us this morning, you need to know that we have been hanging the bunting in the studio today to celebrate the 30th anniversary of The Fall's brilliant album, The Wonderful and Frightening World of the Fall. Steve Hanley was a member between 1979 and 98, known, of course, for his distinctive bass lines, and he co-wrote 100 of the band's songs. He managed to stay in the lineup longer than any of the other members, 19 years in total. And actually, Steve's younger brother, Paul, joined the band in 1980. He was only 16, still at school. If you want to find out what that experience was like, Steve has a new book out. It's called The Big Midweek, Life Inside the Fall, co-written with Olivia Piekarski. And this morning, he gives us a flavour of that time.
3-minute epiphany.
Six Music.
As you know, I was in The Fall for 20 years, or best part of 20 years, and I left in 1998, and
I'm totally wired.
it was just something I got into, and after 15 years, I was kind of institutionalised, I think. I was coming up to 35, and I'd been in The Fall all my adult life, and I didn't really know anything else.
I'm totally wired. I'm totally wired. I'm totally
It was the
wired.
total way of life that you got into, and yeah, at times it was hard work, at times it was a lot of fun, at times it was traumatic, especially the last 5 years that I was in it were quite bad.
Can't you see? A butterfly stomach grounds. I drank a jar of coffee, and then I took some of these, and I'm totally wired.
The good, bad or whatever thing about The Fall is that we did everything. We started off back of the transit, tiny label, little clubs, where you didn't really need much talent. It was more just getting something together between your friends. Then we moved on to the major label, big tour bus, big venues and theatres and big festivals. Then we went back. Then we went back to the transit van and the small venues, and we've kind of covered the lot, which I think is more interesting, isn't it?
It was bad, cold obscene, and the rich were so mean.
Album after album after album. We weren't going 20 years and made 5 albums. We were going 20 years and made 25 albums. Constantly changing, people coming in and out. Because The singer had a real dislike for that, being in a band and just doing tour album. So we did the ballet and we did the play. It does kind of cover the whole of the music biz, I think. Because of the fact that we had fairly small but really loyal fan base, that enabled us to keep continuing, but only just financially. We had to do an album a year and we had to do lots of gigs to keep it all going. So there's a certain discipline involved in that, I think, that a lot of bands don't have. I love being in the studio. There's something really good about 5 people in a room just bouncing ideas around and creating something out of nothing. You can go in there with a couple of little ideas and in an afternoon come out with a great song. It surprises me that people are still interested after so long. During the 90s, it definitely became a bit of a joke. It was a bit of a pantomime, and which totally devalued the music. But I think that's gone now, and then now people are looking back and thinking they did make some great albums, you know, which is part of the reason why I left, because it's okay doing a pantomime, it's fine, but there was no place in that for me. You know, I just stood at the back and played the bass, so, you know. When I left, there was a real couple of years of adjustment, but I think I'm a different person now. I don't think I could work with the people in the Fall anymore. No.
And here's Steve Hanley's all-time favourite Fall tune.
Given the choice, I'd pick Bill Is Dead off Extricate. It always should have been a single. It's one of Craig Scanlon, the guitarist's, finest songwriting moments, and I think it's a Fall song that appeals to everybody. The lyrics aren't about goblins coming out of the teapot or whatever. They're about, I think they're personal lyrics. I think it's one of the Fall's finest moments. It's a simple bass line, but yeah.
Bill Is Dead by The Fall in the year of 1990. It goes out to Scott McQueen, Wireless Nights, and Rob Grew this morning. And yeah, well, of course, the band were John Peel's favourite. Always different, always the same, he said. They played 24 sessions for John Peel's Radio 1 show, and apparently his only criticism came of them when they released their album Levitate. Marky Smith went on to tell Loaded magazine that Peel was the worst than Tony Blackburn ever was, and this was John's reply. He said, well, hostile opinion of me, I have to say, but nevertheless, bearing in mind that he's not in perfect working order at the moment, and the band have given me intense pleasure over the years. I still love him madly.
Six Music.
And so this is BBC Radio 6 Music, and we are celebrating the life and times of The Fall on the programme this morning. Their debut album, Live at the Witch Trials, was recorded in one day, actually, and released in 1979. And they've since put out 30 studio albums, and they're currently making a new one in Salford as we speak. Brix Smith was a member between 1983 and 89, and she actually met Marky Smith at a gig in Chicago in 82, and 1 year later they were married. She introduced very strong hooks into the Fall songs and had a great deal of influence over the band's sense of style as well. She left the group after 6 years and her breakup with Mark, and I think it's fair to say that her chapter with the band is a favourite of so many fans. So we asked Brix Smith, what's it like being in the Fall?
Hello, my name is Brix Smith Start, otherwise known as Brix Smith.
3 Minute Epiphany.
6 Music.
What is it like to be in the Fall? Oh my God, how do I even answer that? For me, the good parts were working with Marky Smith as a songwriter. He and I had an amazing connection and co-wrote some fabulous songs, which at the time I couldn't even see how good they were, but stepping back 20 years, whatever, I can now have total respect for what we did together. And it was really a great partnership. Even more than that, working with the band, playing with 2 drummers, it was literally like playing in front of a freight train. It was so powerful. And when we were on and when we were together and having a brilliant gig, it was magical to the point of almost religious. And I have not really seen another band that actually touched the sides of it. So there were great things. Of course, it was a very difficult band to be in as well. It was gritty, hard, dirty, quite violent. We slogged and we grafted, 9 of us in a transit van. But we worked really, really hard and played everything from working men's clubs to like football stadiums. It was just a really interesting arc.
Could be the Smiths sometimes. You get away with murder, you know.
People always think of it as it's Mark's band. Well, it's not. It's a really collaborative effort. People would bring in the skeleton of the song during a songwriting process, and everyone else would fill in the flesh and bones and blood, and it would morph into something different because we were all creating together. It was practically telepathic, and that's what great bands are. It's just, you can feel it.
Here is books of the Lisbon Club.
The reputation is that it's on the verge of collapse at any time, the band. And I think that was exactly how it felt. It felt incredibly unstable. For me, it was really upsetting. Like every time we'd lose a drummer, it was like your foundation would fall out and you'd think, oh my God. I mean, we even lost a drummer once during a sound check and a new drummer had to step in and play the gig. I just thought I would die. It was volatile all the time, 24/7. And it was, you know, kind of like living in a war zone. Really, it was hard, let me tell you, mentally hard. But I learned a lot from it and came out strong. I learned that usually change is for the best, and to be able to not fear it but to go with it, because every new person brought something new to the table. So yes, it was like a house of cards, and it was so severely volatile. I mean, Mark Smith is a madman, really, he is, but he's a genius at the same time. You know, we were married many, many years ago, not for too long, but for a little while. People say to me now, how the hell could you have been married to him? And I say, well, first of all, he's incredibly intelligent, like crazy smart and super, super creative. But, you know, back in the day, he was also a real gentleman. He's an enigma. You'll never know him. You'll never know him like I knew him. I don't know him anymore. You know, that's a really good question. Are the Fall properly appreciated in this country or actually in the world? And the answer to that is absolutely not. I mean, they are revered within certain aspects of the music industry, but loads of people still don't know who they are. I'm not sure why that is. I'm hoping that their time will come, even belatedly. You know, it's not an easy band to listen to, but there are hardly any bands that were so distinctive, unique, groundbreaking, pioneering, seminal, in the words of John Peel, mighty. Such an influential band, a band that has never really gotten their dues.
Regular listeners will know there are a few words in English finer than tonight, a new session from the Fall, and that's what we've got for you. We think it's the 24th, but we're not absolutely certain about it. Before I play you the first track, an email from Chris Goodhead, the first of the night. Chris says, good message.
Brix Smith, she's just a goddess, isn't she? And this is the Fall tune that she wanted you to hear.
Fall song I would like you to play is called Hotel Blood L. I think it's on the Perverted by Language album. And it was the very first song I ever recorded with The Fall. And it was originally a song that I had written for my solo work. I never intended to be in the Fall in the beginning. I was brought over by Mark because he was going to produce me as a solo act. It was kind of a Svengali thing. But he heard this song and he really loved it. So I went into a booth thinking I was rehearsing it, for the producer, played it, sang it, and they took the first take of the rehearsal. And that became Hotel Blodel. Anyway, this is my favorite song I ever did with the Fall. It was also the first song. Listen and enjoy.